Welcome back. Well, stress has become an inextricable part of our lives, and how do we deal with it is a significant impact on our health, right? And how exactly do we go about doing this, right? How do we actually take care of our health, acknowledging the stress that we're dealing with, as well as the times that we're in? While joining us with some ideas is the founder of the Stress Less Clinic, Sean Waters. Sean, thank you so much for your time this morning. I mean, we've been speaking about stress with Morena and myself and some of the experiences that we've gone through. But talk to us a little bit about exactly, if we had to say to you, what is stress? Because a lot of people use this term very colloquially or flippantly, so as to say, they'll say, I'm stressed. What is it exactly?
Well, thank you for having me, Morena. When you were talking about your lost phone, we were talking about the phantom phone syndrome, which is inside of your pocket. So very much when you have an amputation, you can't do that without your leg or your arm, or you feel like it's there. The same thing without your phone. So that's just, by the way, that's stressful. Secondly, what is the new science of stress? The new science of stress is actually about FOMO, fear of missing out, and FUTU, which is the fear of the unknown. So these two factors are so very, very important. Excuse me. So these factors actually result and are the causes of the roots of stress. So these are simple things that cause us stress. So what is stress? Stress is exactly that. It's going to the root of what we have. And our brains and our minds and our bodies are geared for stress, called the HPA axis. But what about the positivity? So we need to have stress, and good stress is called eustress. And when we have bad stress, those are all the things which are actual bad habits or bad behaviors. So when we have too much stress, that is basically what is happening, is that habit of bad repetition is actually causing what is going on. So succinctly, that is what it is, and we call it the new science of stress. So gone are the days of what we call the stress, which goes back to Hans Seeley, who put together GAD and looked at the phenomenon. But today, we are certainly looking at the new science of stress and how we deal with it.
Sean, you mentioned something that I actually had never known about, good stress. For me, stress has always been negative. You know, stress has always been bad. You cannot have stress because, you know, it puts you in a particular mood that you really don't want to be in. But then when you say good stress, would this be, you know, the common line of, I work well under pressure? You know, would that be it? Because that too, by some, is seen as something that's positive. It gets you, you know, in a particular zone for you to be more productive. What then is determined as good stress?
Good stress is obviously we need stress in our lives, and we do have stress in our lives, but it's the level of stress that actually causes that. So good stress will then be that adrenaline that is going through you. You get excited. And when you're actually writing something or you're getting excited about something passionate, that is good stress. So that's stressful. You need to meet a deadline. But if you have what we call attention management and you plan in your stress, you will need to plan your stress the same as you would drive your motor car. Why would you not want to plan your stress? So we actually have a stress journal, which we can actually do and monitor and measure. So the good stress is there for us. So I wouldn't be talking to you today in terms of what I've found out through incredible technology about planning to be here to talk to you about stress. It's about gathering information, putting it together, being ready for the conversation. So being prepared for the conversation today, even though I know what I'm talking about, well, I think I know what I'm talking about, I needed to prepare. So one always needs to prepare.
Yeah. Bad stress now. And I know that it reminds me of a series. I don't know if you've ever watched it, Morena. It used to be called Stressed Eric. It was a cartoon long time ago. It reveals my age. But bad stress in itself, it manifests itself in different ways. Others would say there's like a throbbing pain, certain types of, you know, side of your brain and the like. But talk to us a little bit, Sean, about how bad stress manifests itself and perhaps even what contributes to bad stress.
Well, contributes to bad stress is obviously the repetition of the bad trauma that you may have had. So we have a concept we call ACEs, which is adverse childhood experience. So the adverse childhood experience called ACEs can actually manifest and go right through life. So based on that, certain personalities also are in a situation of stress. So the stress then becomes burnout. And burnout becomes when you are really not able to operate correctly. However, I've experienced with emergency medicine doctors that they're actually burnt out. So we actually have to help people to deal with burnout. From burnout, we then have what I call PTSD. So PTSD is before we become PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And that can then cause problems in terms of not only the physiological side, the psychological side, the behavioral, and all of those aspects related to it. So we have a loss of energy, mobility, we have a loss of metabolic alterations, stimulation of immune systems, and those cause real problems. So much so that even too much stress can actually cause a heart attack.
Sure.
Cardio can actually cause that through stress not being treated, not being looked after. And you can look after your own stress. You don't need to necessarily go to a professional. Obviously, a professional will obviously guide you and help you, but you can help yourself by identifying your stresses.
I grew up in an environment, Sean, where our parents didn't believe that children can suffer from stress. What is it that's stressing you? You're eating food that's bought by me, living in a house that's paid for by me. You don't have to deal with anything that I have to deal with. All you need to do is get your good grades and just live an amazing life as a child. That obviously is false because, you know, kids do suffer from stress. But then how then, as a parent, do I identify that my child is suffering from stress, and how then do I help them identify it and then help them deal with it?
To help them to identify it and help you to identify it is the factor we call fear. False evidence appearing real. So we need to test the R of real. Is it real? And ask the question why. Once we have those particular aspects to it, we can then be able to answer the question. So if the child is stressed, do we know if the child is already stressed and what causes it? Of course we have stress. We've just seen on the news right now about environmental stress because we also embrace the stress that other people are feeling. So in terms of our compassion for others as human beings, your compassion for your children, you would obviously then feel that compassion and you would know that your child is stressed and you know that those aspects are there. But the best thing you can try and do is to try and be positive about it. So I wonder why you haven't asked me the question about financial stress. How do we deal with it? Why do we have problems with financial stress? It's because we let this rent space in our head. We are going to struggle with finance. So when you put these negative thoughts in your mind and put the negative thoughts in your children's mind, we always look at that part of it, of the negativity. And the repetition of negativity through habit and repetition actually causes you to be financially stressed. So one has to look at being positively financially stressed and be able to deal with it and plan it. Plan, do, control, and measure.
Yeah. You know, as you're having this conversation, Sean, I want to labor on the point around financial stress because if COVID-19 has certainly showed us is that, number one, we're all vulnerable. Things can change in just a blink of an eye, right? So COVID-19 has taken away a lot of our loved ones, which I'm sure adds to the PTSD aspects. I think many South Africans are grieving. The floods in KwaZulu-Natal has left many people grieving, and then further exacerbated by the economic downturn that we've seen of late. We're struggling to get back up again. You know, the financial stress can be crippling. Can it take it to a point where it can even contribute to strokes, for example, and some of the illnesses that a lot of people are facing these days?
Yes, I think that the human being is wired in terms of what we call this particular existential vacuum. The existential vacuum is this loss of meaning and purpose. So one finds that there's no meaning and purpose in life, but we have to deal with what we have to deal with. So we have the 3 A's: accept, acknowledge, and your attitude towards how we deal with it. So I know those are hard words. So when someone dies, put it that way, we are in a situation that you acknowledge and accept that the person has passed on. It's now our attitude of how we're going to deal with it. And our attitude is, are we going to just bury our heads in the sand and grieve continually? Or are we going to continue to try and search for that meaning and purpose in our lives? So there isn't an actual answer related to financial stress, and I can see certainly what is happening on the ground. And we have what we call on the ground psychological first aid. And those are new aspects. So in 2020-21, we're in a situation where we have what we call new stress, isolation, people stressing about that. And where do they go to? They go to social media. Why? Because it's FOMO, fear of missing out. And we take on these aspects ourselves, so we should try and limit ourselves to looking at that. So attention management, we have financial problems, but put it into the box. We have the problem. Now, what can we do and how can you deal with it? We have 1,000 Rand. Well, how can we make effective that 1,000 Rand? And the thing is to always to continue to pay your accounts or your debts. So if it's 1,000 rand that you've got, you can only afford to pay 50 rand. You say to the person, I can only afford to pay 50 rand. That will then take the stress off you and off them.
Just before we let you go, it would be wrong of me as a sports anchor to not notice what is over your right shoulder. And considering that you're a fan of that particular team, they're in their backyard this weekend, they're not sitting on pole position, how are you going to manage that stress? I mean, they've been doing well, have Ferrari, Sean, but do you think they're going to continue to do well this weekend?
Oh, absolutely. I've been a Ferrari fan from when I was very, very young. I'm an avid, hard Ferrari fan, a supporter. So where's Ferrari going to be? I believe that Charles can do it. I believe that the engine is there. I think he's got everything is there, and he's definitely got the right attitude, and he's definitely got that driven stress, which is the good stress. So I believe that Ferrari's definitely going to win.
Sean Waters, thank you so much for joining us here on the South African Morning, of course. And if you're wondering why I mentioned Ferrari, well, there is the Imola Grand Prix, that's in Italy, the home of Ferrari, that's happening this weekend. Red Bull, driven by Max Verstappen, are taking pole position. No, a lot of people don't. Don't worry.
Like him.
But yes, he's in pole position this weekend. Charles Leclerc and his teammate Carlos Sainz Jr. are the 1-2 Ferrari sitting in third and fourth place, rather second and third place this weekend. So that was just a deviation from the normal stress we were talking about to a kind of sporty kind of stress, which is still stress nonetheless.
Yeah, well, by the way, speaking about sporty stress, do you know that there's certain people, and I've heard about this, and I know that as a sports person that you know this, that sometimes when people's teams lose, right, they used to say that, I think somebody that I knew that was an Orlando Pirates supporter, when Orlando Pirates lost, the entire family would be depressed. And the reason why they'd be depressed is because the man of the house, so as it were, would be like angry and stressed and completely, and it just shows you how much it can manifest itself. There are people that actually take it too far, where they can beat people up. That's why we see a lot of people like fighting after a football game and the like.
Definitely, and this is something that's never going to end, unfortunately. Sometimes, to just take it a bit further, it has to do with the fact that people, bet, and they place pretty much their entire lives on betting for teams. So that then is an added stress. So you already love your team, and your team loses, but now you put a lot of money on your team. And now
financial stress.
Yeah, financial stress. So now the stresses, where sports is concerned at least, just vary, in all their difference. But of course, yes, that was Sean Waters, who is a stress specialist.